thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I know that a lot of us have seen the email and the news that we've had a tragedy with a city employee that's been a very long time wonderful employee. So I think it would be a great idea to give a moment of silence to Darren and Kim Mizokami, just for the wonderful blessing that they gave us in this community and in this world. So with that, I'd like to give them a moment of silence. Thank you, and I don't want to speak for all of council, but I know all of our thoughts and prayers go out to this family, and that if there's anything that we can do to help this family, please let us know. First up on the agenda, I'd like to invite Ms. Brooke Kaufman to give her presentation from the Casper Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. She's going to give us an update, some new information.
Okay. So thank you. This is actually a pretty good audience. I just was joking. You guys are the last municipality of the Joint Powers Board that I get to speak to. So we've been to Evansville, bar none, Midwest, Edgerton. Thanks, Carolyn. You bet. I didn't want to. Anyway, so I'm super excited to be here. And I always like to start with trivia. So I might be breaking the law here, but I'm sure somebody in the room will tell me if I am. I like to start with trivia. And usually I give away cute notebooks that say we love Casper or visit Casper. And those are in my office. So I'm giving out dollar bills today. So if I cannot give them to council, wherever the attorney is, let me know. Okay. So, okay, it's $1. It's $1 per question.
Giving them to him.
It's a bona fide social relationship.
There you
It's a legal
go.
form of gambling.
So my first question, and some of you should know this, how many visitors guides did Visit Casper print this year?
Anybody?
Somebody can take a random guess.
100,000.
100,000? Less. We printed 70,000 the year of the eclipse, and we did a few less this year. Any other guesses?
65,000.
So close.
67,000.
61-2.
58,000.
Higher.
59,000.
Give me one more. You're on my board, Sean. Okay. Okay, next question. How many people came to Natrona County for the eclipse?
28,000.
Close, but less. 24,000. So close, but just a few less. 23,000. She's trying to get the dollar. Council?
22,000.
I think it's okay if she gets a dollar.
20,000.
No.
21,000.
20,000. You can't get another dollar.
20,000?
No, more. Sean just said it. Anybody want to say it?
Say it, Keith.
Okay, goes to Johnson, 21,000. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, this is going to be a tough one. I would love for you guys to know this. So next year, well, let's just say this year. How old is the Natrona County Travel and Tourism Council? How many years has the Joint Powers Board been in effect to allow us to promote tourism in Natrona County?
18?
More. 28. So close, but more.
30 years.
No. 29. Yes! Give her a round of applause.
go,
Okay,
Jackie.
and that's why I'm here actually. So the Joint Powers Board is 29 years old this year. Next year we're going to be 30 years old. So in November, the ballot initiative for the lodging tax, you're going to see it on your ballot. I'm not here to ask you to vote. I'm not here to push that agenda. But I do want to educate and talk about how we spend the money and what we're doing to grow tourism in Natrona County. Sound okay? Okay, I promise I won't put you to sleep. If you want to ask me to leave, I will. No one has yet. So let's talk about, let's give you just a context to start with. So is anybody here from Michigan? And some of you have heard this and I apologize. Tracy's from Michigan, anybody else? So in 2006, the state of Michigan was at the bottom of the barrel from a marketing perspective. Liz, you've heard this too. Like bottom 5, guys, nobody was going to Michigan. In 2008, they elect a governor who believes that tourism is a diversification strategy for their state. So she gets elected and invests $50 million that first year in marketing tourism in Michigan. Obviously, next couple years, they go from bottom 5 to top 5. It's one of the top campaigns of all time. Anybody heard of Pure Michigan?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it started as tourism, and then it went to economic development, and now people are putting the logo right next to their barcodes, right? So it's really become this battle cry for Michigan. They don't spend $50 million a year, they spend $38 million a year on marketing in the state of Michigan. So let's bring it a little bit closer to home. Anybody wanna guess what the Office of Tourism for Wyoming spends to market the state? It's less than Michigan.
I'm gonna say 3 million.
No, thank goodness, a lot more than that.
Good.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, Bob, that would be terrible, or Councilman Hopkins. So the state of Wyoming spends $12.5 million a year. Let me tell you something, we're number 31 on the list of 50 states. So South Dakota outspends us, Colorado outspends us, Utah outspends us, because they're huge outdoor rec states, right? So that's why we're always fighting the good fight. Now we're gonna bring it a little bit closer to home. Let's talk about right here in Natrona County and our budget. Anybody wanna guess what our budget is this year for marketing Natrona County to the world?
I'll go with the same number, 3 million.
1.6.
Okay.
So the highest collection we've ever had is 1.8 million. This year our budget is 1.6 million. So why is this? Tourism is big business because it's new dollars into an economy. So it's not all of us recirculating our dollars. That's why it's so competitive out there. So what is tourism in Natrona County, right? What is tourism to Casper? People get that, people ask me that all the time. You don't have Disney World, you don't have a beach, you don't have. What we do have is a very diverse visitor market, meetings and conventions, right? And we know people like to come to the center of the state for that. We also market sports and events. Anybody here fish? No one? Whoa. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we know we have world-class assets in fishing. So what's really good about tourism for us is that it's very diversified instead of so reliant on one industry. So even when corporate or energy business goes, tourism helps backfill some of that. So were we down in spend when our economy took a hit? Heck yeah. But we weren't down to zero, so tourism is alive and well. I'm happy to share it with you. How many visitors came? In 2017, and this does include the Eclipse numbers, we had 885,000 overnight visitors. That's almost 1 million people that come here, right? They stay in hotels, they stay at campgrounds, they stay with friends and family. So that number is up about 40,000 people from the year prior. So we're excited to see a little bit of growth in that, right? So the Eclipse is 21, we're up 40, you can do the math, we're still plus. So let's talk about money. We have 885,000 people come. They spend $296 million. That's new money, okay? So that direct spending equates to over 2,600 jobs. And if you'll follow the trend line on jobs in tourism over the last 10 years, you'll see that it's a really stable employer. So we don't fluctuate 400 or 800 jobs with whatever the economy's doing. We're up or down maybe 100, 150, 200 at the most. So it's very, very consistent on the employment front. It also generates earnings. It obviously then also generates taxes. So every one of us in Natrona County would have to write a check for $457 to equal all the taxes that are generated off tourism spend. Am I losing anyone? Okay, everybody's awake still. So let's talk about collections. So when we started 29 years ago, it was a 2% lodging tax on accommodations. And at that time, it generated a couple $100,000. So it wasn't anything significant, but that's not an insignificant amount of money either. So fast forward several years later, the voters are very generous to us, and they go to 3%, right? So all the collections now on lodging go to 3%. So you can see in 2014, the last time it was on the ballot, the voters were amazing again and said, yes, I'll support going to 4% on the lodging tax. It couldn't have happened at a better time, and honestly, it was in the nick of time. So as our corporate business started to go, that going to 4% that year, the following year allowed us to stay very even in our budget, which allowed us to keep going in the tourism even when energy was down. So it was good timing. What do we spend our money on? Let me get out of the way of the press, they'll want to know. We talked about meetings and conventions, so you can see the breakdown. We also go after sports and events. So everybody knows we host high school tournaments. We give a significant amount of money to that. Also CNFR, but then also things like Wyoming Amateur Wrestling Association. We run the Cowboy State Games, 3-on-3 basketball. So we talked about fishing. I'll say that one for last. Special projects, and I'm just going to be real honest here. In the last few years, we've had to put a line in our budget for retention. So what's happening is sometimes an event that's here will say, the facility that we're in is no longer satisfactory for us, so we're going to shop this or we're going to take it out of the city. Well, we don't want to lose that business, right? So we're having to figure out how do we close the gap on those facilities to get them in a facility that does work, And oftentimes that's at the expense or a check that we will write to make that happen. So that's the special projects. The visitor center, and this will come up again. A couple years ago, you guys will remember, for a long time, 49 years, it was in the Chamber of Commerce here in Casper. And Gilda said one day, which I totally get it, she said, you know what? I want to focus on member services. I don't know if us having the visitor center is the best use of our time and energy. So it was a real discussion in the community, and there was a lot of dis-ease around the process, and you guys will probably remember this. So it ended up that our organization signed an MOU with the BLM. Have you ever signed an MOU with the BLM? Right. They were amazing. So the cool part about that is the city actually used to fund the visitor center to the tune of somewhere between 30 and 35,000. You don't anymore. So on the MOU, it's a no cost contract. So they provide the toilet paper, the lights, the water, all of the services. We do place a part-time employee up there, and we work with them on the marketing and wayfinding. It's been an amazing relationship. So where do we go? Let's talk about how we work with you. So I think there's probably a lot of things that go on between our organizations that we don't get to talk about very often that I think are really good things. So one of the first places I'll start is CNFR. So the city and the county are primary contract holders on CNFR. Well, one of the stipulations of the contract is raising, I think it's 48 room nights in a hotel for 12 nights. Well, our office helps, we go out and solicit those, and that's to the tune of about $100,000. So we help keep the CNFR contract moving forward in that way. I also mentioned the visitor center, so that's to the tune of 30 or 35,000 that we just absorb that to take that on. We also, in Carolyn, I'm so glad you're here, we support a lot of the events that come out of the rec center. I think last year Carolyn had grants from us to almost 11,000. I think it's 10,500. And then the event center, we've written checks to for events as well. So there are a lot of direct benefits or ways that our organization works with the city to be able to keep things and grow tourism. So a couple wins. I won't spend a lot of time here, and no one's disagreed with me yet. I think the Eclipse Festival was a big win for the whole state, right? I think the city of Casper won. I think the state of Wyoming won. We welcomed a lot of people. We rolled out the red carpet and introduced people to Wyoming, and I hope we're proud of that, because I'm proud of that. We talked about the visitor center relocation. Here's what I think you'll be most excited about. The statistics, the number of people we're able to serve out of that facility has tripled. So in 2015, we saw 6,000 people at the visitor center. In 17, we saw over 30,000 up at the trail center. So we're seeing more people, we're serving more people, and we're giving them a good experience. So it's been a great win for the city. CTA, do I have any CTAs in here? I know Kevin, Carolyn, so I've got 3 of them. So right before the eclipse, our board, and Sean, you were on the board, I think at the time, we said, oh God, there's tens of thousands of people coming for this eclipse. How are we gonna help prepare our front line? How are we gonna be in the discussion to really have people say the right thing when visitors are here instead of maybe things that aren't so good? So we are the first city to offer the Certified Tourism Ambassador Program. It is a frontline and hospitality program that is recognized nationally. We have had 413 people go through the program and 75 employers involved. We're not stopping until we have all 2,600 people. So we're the first, I'm very proud of this, we're the first CTA city, and in the state of Wyoming right now, we're the only. So Cheyenne's nipping at our heels, but we're getting close. A couple things that I think you guys are gonna find really interesting. With the eclipse, our collections were higher than we thought they were, so we budgeted less than what we took in last year. So we were able to fund a few projects that were really meaningful that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. The first was the market demand study on a conference center. And you guys will remember when we came in with the group and Tom wrote about it and the Casper Star Tribune wrote about it, it was the it was the Conference Center Consortium group, right? So after the city sold the land by David Street, our board said, let's pump the brakes here for a minute and figure out, nobody's ever been able to tell us, would a conference center induce demand or would it shift demand? So is it gonna steal business from Ramkota, Ramada, Parkway, or is it gonna bring new business to Casper? So we invested a huge chunk of money on that study. The good news is it does induce demand. The challenge is it's not a runaway gig. So the way that we have the study, and you guys, anybody's welcome to have a copy of it, the project pencils, which is great, but nobody's gonna run away and make millions and millions of dollars, okay? So, and I'm happy to give anybody a copy of that who wants it. The second thing, and you might have seen this on the news, we were able to fund an economic impact study for CNFR this year. So, we've had CNFR 20 years, and I know I've mentioned this. Every year, ESPN calls and says, Brooke, what's CNFR worth? And I'm like, don't know. No, I know how many contestants come, I know how many hotel rooms we give away, but I don't know. So we just got the numbers back and met with we met with Carter and a couple of the commissioners last week. CNFR generates $1.9 million in that week. So, is it a good event for Casper? Yeah. Does every event do $1.9 million? No. Is there opportunity to grow though? Yeah, right? And we need to sell more tickets to that event. I don't think that surprises anyone. We gave away over $250,000 last year in grants. So those are all people who are driving tourism in some way, shape, or form. CNFR, Proud to Host the Best, Central Wyoming Fair and Rodeo. We're almost done. Okay, just making sure you guys are with me. So, and Aaron saw this already at Rotary, at his Rotary group. So it's awesome to come up here and talk about unicorns and rainbows and be happy and everything's perfect. It's not, right? We do a lot of good work, but we have challenges too. So the first is we're governed by a lot of bodies. So we have bylaws, we have the Joint Powers Board Agreement, which you guys are the signers on, and then we also have state statute. So 29 years ago, the legislature said you're allowed to do this, but with your tourism dollars, you can only fund promotion. You cannot fund capital, which means never ever have I been able to put a bus on the streets that will move conventioneers around our city. And folks, we lose business because we don't have a way to move them. So it doesn't mean that we don't from time to time go rent a bus from USA Motor Coach or USA Coach or, and spend our $1,200 for the day. We do it, but we're not winning there. The second piece is because we can only do promotion, we don't ever get to be in the development game. So let's say that I knew that if Kevin put a Ferris wheel in David Street Station, that we would drive occupancy by 10% in January. That's a total lie, and I pulled it out of the sky, but it's true, let's say. Because of the way the statute's written, I don't get to be in the capital game or invest in that, even if I know it will drive tourism, I have to wait for somebody else to be in that. So that's also a huge challenge for us. And then the last piece is, we have a very respectable budget. I'm very proud in where we are in Wyoming that we have what we have. But we lose a lot to Billings and Rapid City because they have more muscle. So they're buying youth sports tournaments right now for $20,000 or $25,000. We run out of steam way faster than that, right? Their budgets are double, so we just don't have the same amount of money to spend. So those are some of the challenges that we really are faced with. We're almost done. Where are we going? So we really are going to work towards ambassadorship. I think if the eclipse, maybe it didn't teach anybody but me this, but I was blown away by the sense of pride in our community. And people were like, I can't believe all these people are here. This is amazing. And they stood down by that map that was on the corner of 2nd and David and put pins in and watched people put pins in. And it was a thing. And I'm like, how do we help or empower residents to love where they live so that they continue to invite people here? We haven't spent a lot of time in this part of our neighborhoods, right? We're always out marketing to bring people. So you're going to see us in that space. Second thing is, with the eclipse, we generated 225 million media impressions. I cannot buy that for $1.6 million, I promise you. So you're going to see us go after earned media in a big way. So just this weekend, we had the Drake, American Angler, and Northwestern Fly Fishing in town so that they could write for us. So we're going to keep doing that because I think we can get farther with our dollars than we can just doing advertising alone. Then the last one is, how do we get into the product development space? Liz was really generous and invited us to sit at the table on some of the wayfinding stuff. So we just always want to sit at the table right now. That's really what we can do. So 2 things you can do. Number 1, we want to make Parade Day great again. Does anybody else want to make Parade Day great again?
Yes.
I'm like, unless you think it's great now. Okay, no. So we would love to work with city and county. Can we give people time off? Can we make sure that the parade continues, that we have a horse in one of our, I don't know what it looks like, but that's one of our goals, as people smile. And then the other thing is we did start an I Love Casper list, so you can text that number. So I know that's a ton of information. I don't want to bore anyone, but I do appreciate your generosity with your time. We're doing good work. We don't win in every space, but I hope, please be proud of the tourism economy here because it is strong and robust and it does help. So I would love to take questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'd love to get out of your hair.
You gave us the numbers on CNFR. Do you have anything similar to all the soccer tournaments and the wrestling tournaments, volleyball?
I only have this, we have estimated the state high school tournaments, and this is not through Dean Runyon. This is our internal calculations, over $5 million on those 5 culminating tournaments.
A year?
Yeah. Pretty significant.
Other questions?
What would you like the city to do for you?
Well, I'd like to figure out transportation. That would be really helpful, and from a lot of perspectives, but certainly the convention perspective. And then I'd like the opportunity to be at the table on the development, because you guys do things that do impact the visitor economy, like wayfinding signage.
What would you like to see, tell me if you could set up transportation, what would that look like?
Well,
that
and
you-
Aaron and I were just talking about this. I said, well, a huge hindrance to us, so I can't buy it. I certainly don't want to maintain it. You have a wonderful city garage that would know how to do that. But maybe we can update something that's a little bit older. We certainly could run, you know, the schedule of drivers or lease it by event or help fill that bus with other people. I think there's a solution in this. I cannot physically buy the bus.
Just, so you need it just during certain periods of the year or yearly?
Well, we have conventions a lot that need them, and we're running shuttle buses or, you know, trying anything we can to avoid that big motor coach, but there are times we can't avoid that.
So have you done the research where you could come in and say, we need you to get us 2 buses that transport 30 people, or run them every day, or during these hours? Are you that far along with it?
No, but I'd love to come to city and say, I need you to get me, you know what I mean?
Well, I think that's what, I need to see the picture you're seeing rather than just some vague
And
concept.
I don't think conventions can keep it all. I mean, I think there's gonna have to be other people who use that bus to move people around. I don't think the volume is there solely for that business.
Because the bus thing is a real issue. They're cutting the funding on the CATSI and the bus system, which I personally disagree with. But I'm happy to hear what you're saying. I don't have a concept, though, in mind of what you may be thinking of. And I think the clearer you can make something to this council, the more apt they are to endorse it.
Good feedback, thank you.
So tonight was information only, but I'm sure if they do have a request down the road, it'll get on the agenda. So, questions about the presentation from tonight?
Thank you, Brooke.
I just wanna say you
You're
guys are
doing good
very
work.
good partners to us, and I really appreciate it. Usually I'm coming because we're trying to figure something out, so tonight it was fun just to tell a good word.
Well, we appreciate the work you do. It's easy for us to forget because you guys are quiet and busy and doing your thing. So, you guys do a great job, and we really do appreciate it.
It goes both ways,
So,
thanks.
thank you. Okay, we're gonna keep plowing ahead. I'm gonna try to keep us on time. Miss Liz Becker, are you the lucky winner of Casper Trails Path Bikeway Plan?
Your Honor, Council, yes, there is actually a team of 6 of us that have worked on the presentation for this evening. And in the packet, we referred to an infrastructure committee. Carter had us earlier in the year when we were setting our departmental goals, work on putting together this committee that's made up of public services with Andrew Beamer, and planning, which would be Craig Collins, myself, and Aaron Clokey, and then our Parks Department with Dan Coriel and of course Tim Cortez. So it's a team of 6, and it's referenced in the council memo we provided. What Carter's objective was to take the plans that may have come under the engineering department and their capital plan, as well as parks plans, as well as all of planning's plans and MPO's plans, and to begin to put together kind of a master implementation schedule. And so what we're going to be doing over the next several months is giving updates on where we are with implementation on a lot of these citywide plans, and how we're coordinating our funding resources as well as our community outreach efforts to get these plans implemented. So tonight we targeted the what we call the Trails, Path, and Path Bikeway Plan, which is referred to as the Bike Ped Plan. This plan, for those of you who are not on council in fall of 2013, was presented. We had a consultant put this document together, and it did go into the details of all the pathways around Casper, sidewalks around Casper, and our bikeways around Casper. And out of this plan came a strategy with 20 goals. And in the memo we put together was to recap for all of you the 20 goals and where we are with each of them. And so tonight I wanted to hit on a few of the most notable successes and how the partnership between our departments and how we're doing some of the funding to continue forward and what we've gotten done to date. So the first one I wanted to hit on was beginning some work that we're gonna look at within, the next month, with our partners with the Casper Police Department on looking at ordinances related to bicycle safety. Now, we have ordinances on the book related to bicycle safety, but we wanna go back as a team. Here we are trying to promote, more pedestrians and more bicycles out on the streets. We're designing trails that way, but we wanna make sure that we're set. And as you've noticed, with council, we are reviewing a lot as a team of ordinances. We also, through our Metropolitan Planning Organization that Aaron oversees, has funds available for training of patrol officers. And there's some videos out there that we're gonna be investing in with some of our federal funds, to share with our patrol team, and we've been in touch with that unit, based on enhancing bicycle safety and enforcing laws for bicyclists. So we're looking again at partnership with the PD on the bike component, and really that'll work hand in hand with pedestrians also. We are in the midst, and we had a kickoff for our long-range transportation plan early September. That document, again overseen by the MPO, is typically a good 10 to 20 year lookout at Casper and what we need from a road, street, pathway infrastructure. That is a required federal requirement for where we get the funding to do such things as buses, as well as some of the planning that goes into our community. And with that particular plan, with the long-range transportation plan, we're gonna be actually updating the bicycle network plan, which is strategy number 7. And we're also going to be working with strategy number 10, which is looking at bicycle and pedestrian crash data, which is necessary for the long-range transportation plan. Strategy 9, which is integrating plans, policies, and practices, is kind of how I kicked it off. We, as a team, are looking at a total of 8 plans. We are looking at the efforts and the implementation, and this is also in your memo on Exhibit C, of our Parks Plan from 2010-2011, this Bike Ped Plan from fall of 2013, the I-25 Beautification Plan from 2015, the Generation Casper Comp Plan that we approved last year. This year you approved the Downtown Urban Center Parking Plan. We're looking at individual years of the capital improvement plans, and we're also working hand in hand with the Platte River Trust on what their plans are that they bring forward to make sure what they're recommending coincides with the previous 7 plans that we put together. We are also looking at strategy number 12, which is wayfinding. Brooke just referenced it, and not only for our bicycle network, but citywide. Mr. Cortez's team with some of our historic assets here in town has been working on wayfinding to get folks not only to Fort Casper off of I-25, but even to find really the way, if you will, to get to some of our other public facilities. But with our downtown partners, with the DDA, they will be serving on this committee. The Historic Preservation will be serving on this committee. MPO, as you heard with Brooke, the Tourism Department, to look at ways that people will, and also YDOT. YDOT's critical, because when you think of I-25 as well as our state highways, we need to have that partnership, and so they're meeting with us this Thursday afternoon as our first team meeting to look at the types of signage that get folks off the highway and into Casper. And we're looking at some more creative looks for signage than just, if you will, a green sign with white lettering, because that's not selling Casper, and we all know it. And so we're looking at some designs that will kind of benefit, whether it's a public facility or a museum, or even just getting folks directional signing into Casper. So that one is again this Thursday afternoon. Then with strategy 15, looking at pursuing funding strategies. We've currently got the federal build grant out for one of the street improvements we want to do along Midwest. With that, we are also pursuing a TAP grant. Mr. Beamer is working on that in order to get the sidewalk and trail network put into the Midwest reconstruction, which will start and get way underway this next year. And so with a funding strategy, it's not all relied on city general funds or 1-cent funds. We're also looking at outside resources, and also we'll have some funding discussions this week with YDOT. Strategy 16, again, prioritizing bicycle improvements. Right off the docket, we've got striping planned for the 21st Street improvement from Missouri Street over to Kingsbury when that project is underway. And then we're also looking at striping K Street, which was recently resurfaced and redesigned, that runs through North Casper with again striping for that bicycle lane, which is part of the bike ped plan. And finally, strategy 17, prioritizing the completion of sidewalk gaps. Identified in the original plan is an entire list of sidewalk gaps in Casper, and I think all of you in your various wards would probably think of places where the sidewalk just ends, then there's grass or dirt, and then the sidewalk picks up. The consultant had identified a lot of these for us. They put a prioritization in place. We will be meeting again as a team of 6 to come back with recommendations on which of those sidewalk gaps need to be prioritized, and again looking at that with capital improvement. And some of them that come up quite frequently are around the mall, and we know that those stop. Dean's nodding, because I think we see that happen. It's just concrete and then nothing. And whether you're trying to walk along past Walmart and you get up to Perkins and then there's nothing to take you up to Home Depot, or even around the mall, which many communities obviously have, so someone could be out walking if other folks are shopping. We're lacking in that area, so that's one that the committee has identified. But then there's just sections of sidewalk gaps. So we get it, and we've got, we'll be bringing forward those updates to this group, as well as providing, our team provides a semi-monthly, or bi-monthly, pardon me, update to Carter, and that would be something that would come out to each of you, so, and updates to council. So that's what we wanted to share tonight, and again, all 6 of us are here if there are questions related to a specific plan or an aspect of one of the strategies.
And you guys don't actually need any kind of
We
direction?
do not.
This is
It's just an
information?
update as to what staff's been working on based on some directions Carter has wanted.
Questions or feedback? Okay. Thank you.
You got off easy this time.
All right, next on the agenda, Tim Cortez, summer pool usage discussion.
Members of council, we may or may not recall, we had a discussion, it had been late April, and there was a memo that came out. We were going to talk about basically cost containment strategies in relation to pool usage. And so I was tasked with investigating what might be looked at as far as if we were going to look at closing any pools, or what that could mean for the community. And so one of the ones that came up would, as you recall, would be Marion Kreiner. And the reason Marion Kreiner came up was because it's kind of like one of our older facilities, and then we're putting currently right now a splash pad sitting right next to it to the tune of about $350,000. So the idea was possibly a trade-off, if you will. We put the splash pad in, and then we remove the pool. The question was, is the pool relevant to the community? So we discussed with all of you making that facility free for the summer. And if you recall, the reason for that was to gather data to ascertain if the facility was still relevant to the community or not. And so that data is in, and I've also included within your packet all of the pools and what their usage is. But I think that for the purposes for tonight, I'll just stick with Marion Kreiner. What we did see this summer was triple attendance. So it could probably be pretty debated as to why that is, or what that relevance could mean to the community. But I think what's more important is that if those numbers had stayed the same or declined, or maybe just marginally went up, you'd probably find someone as an advocate or recommendation saying that facility probably is not relevant to our community. However, that is not what we got. So what it speaks to you as an individual could probably vary the spectrum, but for tonight, it was mainly for information. But if you have any direction for me to look at other things that you would like me to as far as cost containment goes, or anything otherwise, I'd be more than happy to do so. But basically the stats are in, and we had a lot of kiddos, a lot of families that showed up to Marion Kreiner this summer to use that facility. And they bought candy and ice cream and stuff like that because they didn't have to spend money on admission. So that was kind of nice. So we did offset some of the lost revenue by doing it that way. But we're not talking about a lot of revenue. Just in a nutshell, $23,000 is about what we spend on that pool annually for staffing and for chemicals and utilities to keep that facility going. We typically see around $3,000 to $4,000 in revenue. And so with that, we kept it free. So we lost out on the $3,000 in revenue, which is not a huge deal. But we did have all those people show up to kind of say, hey, we'll use the facility under these circumstances. So with that, I'll leave it to council for any questions we have.
Chris, then Dallas.
Am I looking at the attendance thing right? In total, we're looking 90,000 people?
For over all of our pools?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
So probably our swimming pools are the most successful thing that we
They're-
have,
they
as
are-
far as attendance goes.
Councilman Walsh, they're very popular, very popular. Hence I think the direction that I got from you as a council, if we're gonna do cost containment, we're gonna look at pools, we really need to have our ducks in a row. What does it look like? And so that was the task, and that's why we did the free swimming, was to ascertain, is it relevant still? And so.
Okay, Dallas.
So what's the average cost to get in the pool?
Oh, the average cost, I have Blaze Grant here and I also have Carolyn, but I'm gonna say it's probably around $6. They all vary depending on the features that are within the pool. Mike Cedar being our most expensive, which is
$450. $450 admission
for Mike Cedar.
for Mike Cedar. The aquatic center is $6.
So do
Aquatic
you
centers.
know do you know the demographics of the folks who use the pool in North Casper? Did they come from all over the city because it was free, or just people in the area, or do you have any way of knowing that?
That's a good question, Councilman Laird. So we don't really collect any data for demographics necessarily, but we did want to take a look at other pools to see if we were drawing attendance from those other pools and they were kind of coming to Marion Kreiner because it's free. And we did see like a slight decrease, like say Washington Park, which would be kind of the next closest facility. But I would probably venture to say that anecdotally that they are not coming from all over the city, but probably in central to North Casper area.
Thank you.
Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that, when my family used the pool this summer, that they don't take credit cards. And it would be handy if you're bringing a whole bunch of kids in, slash it and go, but I understand it may not be that easy, but I know we've got some new software in the works, and I wonder if that would help us there.
Councilman, we did listen to you. I think you brought it up previously in a meeting, and so me and my staff are looking into it. We have every intention that that'll be launched for next aquatic season. It was just a technology with the special requirements that it takes to run credit cards in a secure manner, and then the lack of a network at those different facilities has kind of been the issue. But we anticipate that hurdle will be taken care of for next season.
The other thing I just want to compliment you on your report, I guess I was pleasantly surprised at what we got for participation at Marion Kreiner. And I think our $350,000 investment in the splash pad probably helped. I don't know what this number would have looked like 2 years ago, but it's competitive with all the other pools, with the exception of the one that we've got several millions in.
Yes, and thank you for that comment, because another thing that maybe the council could help us with on direction would be is if we want to leave Marion Kreiner free in the future. That would be another question that I would pose to everyone to maybe mull over, and we obviously have time to sort that out as time goes on. But also do keep in mind that you do subsidize the pools with your 1 cent allocation, which I think we're talking about today, but that's to the tune of $1.3 million annually. And that's what keeps that, Councilman Laird, at that $4.50 for some of those outdoor pools and $6 for the aquatic center, is through that allocation. So it is important to us.
I wouldn't mind just continuing the current policy, at least for now.
Maybe we ought to see what it looks like and make them all free for one summer and see what happens.
It's an option.
Okay, let's come back to that. Chris has a question, I believe.
Yeah, it's related directly to that. This says direction requested, so are we looking at direction on maintaining Marion Kreiner as it is? Is that the only direction that you're looking for? What else are you looking for?
I think that I would leave that to council. It could be just totally for informational purposes, because we promised you some data points and we got it for you.
Okay.
But if you do have any direction, just like what we're talking about taking credit cards, I absorb that and then we can build it in, we can bring something up for you later to show you how that looks.
Is that something that you guys wanna see?
I think we should make it very easy for people to pay.
Well, cause it sounds like the credit card thing's going to happen. But are you guys wondering if we can make Marion Kreiner free for another summer?
I'd go for that.
I would too.
I
Is
would
that
like
some-
to see them all free next summer and see what happens.
Yeah, do you know, what would that cost to make them all free for a summer?
How much money would we lose?
Yeah, I'd have to work that up for you, because every one of those facilities varies. But Marion Kreiner was one of the ones that we looked at specifically because of the lack of attendance and the lack of admission fee because of the lack of features. So it's kind of like low-hanging fruit, if you will. So I could work that up for you to figure that out, but I'd probably be coming back to you and probably for a larger 1 cent allocation than the 1.3 million that we're
Offset
looking at
probably.
currently to offset.
Yeah, it's
that.
gotta get paid, they have to be paid for somewhere.
Or
Bob
just
and-
go with the new one, just go with another new one free along with Marion Grinder.
Mhm.
So you wouldn't have that loss, but you would see how it affects it.
Bob, and then I have a suggestion.
Yeah, just looking at, you know, we have the food truck thing going on all over town, and everybody's got the food truck thing. I just wonder if they've had a chance to do something like that at Marion Kreiner. Just say, oh, it's Food Truck Thursday or something, and I don't know.
Not to my knowledge, and Blaze or Carolyn can correct me if I'm wrong, but we do a float day at Marion Kreiner, which is like a root beer float, and the kids can come in
Okay.
for a couple bucks and they get a free root beer float and a day, you know, sometimes swimming. So we've done some different promotions that kind of boost the attendance and stuff, but I don't know that
Good.
we've ever done anything specifically for food trucks.
Well, promotion, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Okay, so my question would be then, maybe not schedule another presentation, but could you work us up some just estimates on what the loss would be and maybe send it out in an email? And then council can talk at a next meeting if that's something that they really wanna pursue.
Yeah, if it pleases council, I'll put down what the individual breakdown for each facility would be to make it free, and then an aggregate total to see everything, and we could get it in an information packet.
Okay, Dallas.
Do you know what percentage of the users of our pools are children under?
We don't capture age, you know, or anything like that. I could probably get just numbers, you know, as far as people that buy passes, something to that effect. But I could say anecdotally, when I go to pools to visit them, the vast majority would be children, and of course they got some parents or caregiver in tow.
Your best guess, do you think that the kids that are using these pools, they high income, middle, low income? And if you don't have a feel for that, that's fair too, because I'm really asking you to.
Yeah, I couldn't really specifically say, but I would say I think it's, you know, judging from, you know, how you drive around and go to the different facilities, I would say it just runs the spectrum. I think, as the Councilman Walsh's point, it's just such a popular attraction for our folks in the community that, you know, it's just open to
Everybody shows up.
Everybody's showing
Yeah,
up. You know, when you're
okay.
talking about those types of numbers, I mean, you're
Well,
getting a
that's
good
good.
cross section of the community.
Okay,
Thank you, Tim.
perfect. Does that give you enough direction?
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, the Lucky John soil compaction in residential areas.
Hey, good evening. Thank you all. Good to see you. The problem was raised by the council, oh gosh, it's probably been almost 7, 8 weeks ago now. And I think the council had received some complaints about a number of homeowners, or from a number of homeowners, that, you know, you put this huge amount of money into one of the largest purchases of your life, and then they're having problems. Their foundations are shifting. There's questions about whether some of those homes are going to be habitable or not, and a big lawsuit's been filed. And so we know, at least when I checked out the file, there had been at least 13 people that filed litigation of this, and I think that there's been several more since then. So my guess is around probably 15, 20 people at least who have had their homes go into litigation because they were having these foundation problems. So the question that the council raised is, can we do something as a city to make sure this doesn't happen again for these folks, because this is a pretty big hit. And the idea was raised, well, how about soil compaction then? Around the foundations, you go in, you compact, you test, you compact, you test, you compact, you test. And so initially the process was, we looked at the litigation file. And from that though, it looked like, oh my gosh, that's really not what they're complaining about here. What they're complaining about is that basically the deep soils, the subsoils are just so unstable, or there's the likelihood of some type of water with the particular soils that they encountered are going to make these foundations shift. And so just compacting around the foundations isn't going to do the job. And so we kind of shifted gears then, and thanks to Craig Collins and Dan Elston, in that they worked very hard to get a lot of input from, all kinds of groups here. They went to the contractors board, and there's no official position, by the way, from the contractors board. They went to contractors, and you'll notice in there we actually have several letters, which would be Exhibit A, and we have letters there from contractors, as well as an engineer, as well as from a realtor, just in the letter section, and that's Exhibit A. But they also then had a morning coffee talk where they had people come in, mostly developers is what it's directed to. They had developers, builders, engineers, realtors. And from that we had a number of surveys that were completed and submitted back, and we tried to incorporate those results. And in fact, those survey responses are in Exhibit C, and we have a summary matrix both of the letters, Exhibit D1, as well as a summary of the survey results, which again is a type of matrix form, and that's Exhibit D2. And so we looked at that, and we tried to utilize the information that we were provided by these professionals. And almost universally, with respect to at least the construction community, they said, no, this soils compaction really isn't going to do the trick. What you guys want to do, we haven't had this ordinance for a long time. We really haven't had an outbreak, if you want to see an outbreak, of this type of problem, not having this ordinance. It's not that. It's just that this particular subdivision with these particular soils, with this particular overburden, was going to have some real difficulties. And if you're going to build on it, you needed to do some really specific type of things. The suggestion, basically putting in piers for each of the houses, and that apparently wasn't done, at least in some instances. And I don't know the specifics with respect to any of these houses, but I do know that the last engineering report, Exhibit B3, was done, and that was for the largest part of this particular subdivision, and they recommended that there be pier foundations for every one of those houses, as best I could read that soils report. And so, in looking then, well, what are we going to do so that if you want to move forward with this, what can we do that can maybe actually have an effect and not be terribly cost disadvantageous to consumers throughout the town, and we don't want to have just a blanket requirement. And so we drafted a proposed ordinance, and certainly this is open for revision. That's kind of why we're here tonight. But as far as the soils testing, we have kind of two categories. On the one hand, we have a category if you're building on natural soils. So if you're building on natural soils, the city's going to require that you go out with a geotechnical engineering firm, and you test the subdivision, and you put down enough holes that firm feels comfortable that the soils you're going to build on are going to be stable. And if that's the case, then you're going to file that report with the city of Casper, and so that it's available for builders or consumers or whatever. But at that point, that's all the testing that the city of Casper is going to require that you have. However, if the geotechnical firm goes out there on these natural soils and finds that the soils are really bad, or that they thought it was natural soils, but they find that there's a lot of overburden or a bunch of fill dirt filled with concrete or metal or whatever, and then if they put in there and they recommend, hey, we think that there should be some lots in this subdivision that should be built with pure construction. And that's gonna be our suggestion, not a requirement. And in that case, you're gonna come down to the subsequent categorization. And that would be under A2 on the ordinance that we passed out earlier today. And in that case, you're gonna have either one then, the natural soils with the finding per the geotesting firm that there's some problems here. And so we're gonna require them to not only do the subdivision test, but each one of those lots now are gonna have some type of geotesting. And it's gonna be up to the builder and to the engineers to determine how much testing it is, because really it's a private entity, kind of a private marketplace type of thing. We can have some oversight, we can put in some requirements to kind of move them that way, but as far as controlling every aspect of it, certainly I don't know that it would be cost effective for the city to do it, to have to increase our staff. And really that should be a responsibility of the people who are out there making money, they're marketing themselves, they're trying to do a good job, and as well as on the consumer, to make sure that they hire someone who's competent and has good recommendations. So for this other category then, you have the soils, the natural soils with difficulties, or you have a bunch of soils that you know have been used for years on end with overburden, putting in unclean fill dirt, that type of thing. And in those cases, again, you're going to have the geo testing on the entire subdivision as well as each of the lots. And so once you have that, then it's really up to the builder to take off with it and to use that information. As part of that, though, we talk about, well, what has to be in the geotechnical reports, and we basically just copied a portion from the International Building Code in that regard. And then we have some basic requirements for foundation, and this is really where we had a lot of the suggestions from the people who responded and had kind of some lengthy dissertations in the letters. They said, you know, what you really want to do if you're going to be looking at that, you open up that hole, have one of your engineers go out there and take a look at that hole, because that hole is going to tell you a lot. If you have some problems, if you have loose dirt there, if you have some different strata of soil there, you know, they're going to want to take a look at that. They're going to have to do some more testing, and maybe that's when they will do the compacting. Maybe they're going to say, no, we have to switch our plan. And instead of just spaced footers, we're going to have to put in some type of pier foundation or the like. And so, so we put that requirement in there, and again, but it's basically the burden's put on the contractor at that point, and the burden's put on then the contractor's engineer. And the contractor has to hire the engineer, so we ask some kind of third party with a professional badge that they don't want to put at risk to come in and take a look at this. And then if it's deemed that it's necessary, it's their obligation to do it. And you'll see basically the structure of the ordinance is that we're going to amend this particular form. And if you look at what the old code section was for 1502-130, all it said was 1502-130 testing, and then testing is referenced in the International Residential Code is deleted in its entirety. That was the essence of our code. So you were saying, well, maybe this is a little light. Well, maybe it was, because residential, the residential code is for single family dwellings or two-family dwellings. And so in that regard, we really had deleted that. We're not going to reference the International Residential Code. We're saying now we're going to keep that. We're not going to go back and incorporate everything they put in there, but we're going to try to make this kind of site-specific for our kind of poor soils, for our difficulty, and maybe for our knowledge of the soils around here due to putting in overburden and not clean fill dirt in various parts of the city. And I think, you know, we say that these are minimum requirements. This is to protect the consumers of residential construction, and these requirements are minimum standards that developers, contractors, and engineers should fulfill their obligations to their clients and the public consistent with civil, criminal, and administrative laws as applicable to subdivision locations and circumstances. So again, we don't want to supersede, you know, good practice, because under certain circumstances these will may not be enough. But this would be at least a good start. The developers will have the obligation to get that initial geotesting done. Dependent upon that, then the builders are going to have to take the baton from there and utilize that information, and then hire, again, an additional expert if need be, to look at that open hole and make decisions about what should be done in the construction of their houses. And then we do require final, the final thing is a final as-built that would again be filed with the city once they start to put up the sides of the buildings and start framing it. At that point, then the foundation's done, and we want to have as-builts there so that we know what's there in case there are problems down the line.
Dallas and then the judge.
I have two questions, one for you and one for the staff. If that ordinance had been in effect before those houses were built out there, would that have prevented the problem?
I'd like to think that it would have mitigated it, if not prevented it. I don't know for sure, but my guess is that, given the way at least the lawsuit's framed, and we all know that, if allegations in a lawsuit may be overstated, but if those allegations are there, and if they're accurate, then you would have had all of these things coming about. Now, I will say that looking at, again, that exhibit P3, it was recommended for all of those lots, the biggest portion of those lots, they all have this pier foundations. And so at that point, then it becomes the engineers, the builders and the engineer. The builder has to get the engineer, they have to work through that. And my guess is if some engineer has his professional or her professional certificate online, then we might have seen some pushback on those builders that didn't want to put in the pure construction, which is more expensive, of course.
So my other question was, is if we had a requirement that they had to have used caissons out there, would that have prevented the problem? I'm asking the staff that. And should we be requiring
It would be
caissons?
difficult for me to answer that as far as professionally. In my opinion, you look at the street that was right next to the home that settled the most, it was compacted and tested and it sank a foot. So I do not know if you would say the compaction was an integral part of the issues that they had in that subdivision. I think if the piers were there, I would assume that it would have been mitigated, but I couldn't say it would have been the lead.
So do we require caissons anywhere?
Yes.
We do?
We do already require a soils report, it's just not by ordinance, for each lot in each subdivision.
Do you think we
prior
should,
to a building permit.
do you think we should require caissons by virtue of ordinance?
That would be up to the soils testing.
Up to the what?
To the soils report from the engineer, that would determine that. And we have a lot of homes that is required. I could give you an example, Shasta Street there would be one lot with piers, the next lot would be spread footings, the next two lots could be piers. And that was developed that way, and we have that throughout the city, where certain lots require caissons and lots right next to them do not.
Thank you.
Mike?
I just want to make sure, John, that I understand a few of these things. Now, like in this section on testing, where it says testing as referred to in the International Residential Code is deleted in its entirety. Is that because what we would be enacting in this ordinance would be a greater standard?
I think probably it would be a little bit less. Again, that's the part that was already there. And so, given kind of the property maintenance code and not wanting to adopt, some of these international standards in total, and the prior councils had deleted it entirely, we thought we're going to go the middle ground here. So I suspect that our requirements here are pretty consistent with that, but I would say they're certainly less wordy and maybe not quite as stringent.
But if you want to make the presumption that enacting this is either a step forward in terms of regulating this kind of thing or not, in your opinion, is this a step forward in regulating this kind of a problem? Or
I think it is more regulation, and
whether if it's going to be of a positive result, I would be amazed if you could.
But you get more people in here, and again, some people I think that are going to have longer standing downsides if they make a mistake,
Yeah,
if they cut corners.
yeah.
And that would be the people with engineering certificates. I mean, if you were a builder and you go out there and you don't do all that well right here, you can move to a different community and
Mhm,
work, and
sure.
it'll get buried.
Well,
after a period
and
of
I'd
time.
kinda like to ask the same question, Mr. Ellison, of you and Mr. Beamer, you know, do you think that this is a step forward in regulating this? Do you think it's ineffective? Do you think, you know?
In the last 10 years, we've built approximately over 1,100 homes in the city of Casper. We have these 13 that we've had this issue with, and they're all in the same subdivision. So as far as percentage-wise, our track record is pretty good.
Mhm.
So for this to go forward to correct something that is in litigation in an isolated case, I don't know whether it is a huge step forward.
Do you think this is a solution out there looking for a problem, or?
Personally, yes.
Same questions?
I tend to concur with Mr. Olson.
Yeah, okay. The next question that I have is some of the terms in here, like on natural soils and a lot of the other terms, are they terms of art that in the building industry have a specific unquestioned meaning that any builder or anybody that looked at this, oh yeah, I know what natural soils, what that means, or
Yes, they would know what that means, and the soils report that we already require would identify those three boarding logs, whether it's natural soils or.
okay, so those are not terms that in the industry are subject to
No.
various interpretations or anything. Okay, that's all I'm.
Okay. Chris and then Bob.
Thank you. The judge had a lot of the same questions as I do. So we have, while it's significant for 13 homes, clearly, very small issues citywide. I don't think that, and we already have regulations on soil testing. Those were already done, and there was apparently recommendations that different types of foundations maybe should have been put in there. How much do we want to regulate and attempt to regulate this issue when I think it's going to be so widely different from location to location in town that you can't put a single script on it because it is based on the types of soils that are underneath. So you could regulate that it was tested and then follow the testing recommendations. And then what's the appeal process on the testing recommendations if I want a different opinion? Or how much expense are we going to require people to put into this? 1,100 houses are built in the last several years and 13 are at issue. I don't think we have any business doing this. The city already does it. The city, sounds to me like they require a soil test.
Well, and if I might kind of ask this, you know, I can recall other, I don't know if you want to call them rashes or, you know, specific areas, you know, like up there in Sunrise 4, up on top of the hill, I think, I don't know if it's on Ash Street or which street it's on up there, that there were 2 or 3 or 4 houses up there that had to be torn down because and that would have been, 10 or 15 years or so ago. So, and I'm just wondering if you guys have any data that goes back any farther than what you were talking about. You know, I don't know if you're familiar
Sunrise 4
with.
was probably built in the 70s.
70s, yeah.
70s, I
Yeah.
believe, and I don't have data on that.
Yeah. And there again, you know, a small cluster of houses there that were built on the top of the side of a hill on filter and some other things that, you know, my dad would have said, no, you don't even go look at that house because that's, you know, and you go along there by old CY Junior High and a lot of those houses along in there, I mean, there's ones that the floor's 8 inches out of being level that have been there since the 40s or 50s. But So, I don't know, you know, I would
When
welcome if
Earth
you
is
guys.
gonna move, sir, CY Middle School that they tore down, was sliding down that hill from the time they built it.
Well,
And ended up,
and my dad, who was the city engineer then, refused to issue the building permit for that school. And the then sitting city council, in response to pressure from the school board, ordered him to issue that building permit. So,
That's a change now because building permits are issued by not the city engineer's office.
Bob, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. We really haven't talked too much here about the cost of doing this. And the cost gets pretty prohibitive pretty fast. In listening to the group of contractors and builders and realtors, they all said that if you want to pay for this, how do you sell the house? Bottom line starting price, according to estimates we saw, was $4,000. That is not going to get your property tested. That'll get a few holes poked and you've got a sample. So you may have some indication, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have a stable foundation. The other thing that we talk about in here is undisturbed soils. And natural undisturbed soils are different than natural soils. If a soil has sat there for 10,000 years or a million years, it's pretty well compacted. You can find out what it can bear through testing, but some of the areas that we have had problems with are typically backfill material. And anybody that builds a house on backfill without taking care of themselves and doing a good job engineered backfill, you're gonna have trouble. And I really think that this is a real burden on a potential homeowner because you're gonna raise the price of the house a minimum of $4,000 with no real guarantee. If there were something that you had an ability to guarantee that foundation, and I'm sure that most top-of-the-line contractors, good contractors, they'll guarantee their work. They don't want to have to go back and do it over. So I think you have to put a lot of faith in your contractor, and I think you should put faith in a contractor. But I don't think by us increasing our rules, we are significantly going to change the instances of 13 out of what, 1,100?
1,100
Yeah,
plus.
I don't think we can change that with this. So I would recommend we don't go ahead with it.
Chris?
0.01% is the reported problem. 0.01. That's not a level at which we need to start regulating this.
Go ahead, Mike.
John, did you look at and compare how this fits with the, you know, the statutes and everything about contractor liability, builder's liability for new construction and that kind of thing? Did you look at that
You know,
angle of things?
I didn't do a look. We referenced in here that, you know, civil law will still be a restraint upon the contractors, but we didn't actually do a comparison. Basically, you have a 10-year statute of repose that if you don't find a problem and get it taken care of within 10 years, under current Wyoming law, your architecture builders, your engineers and the like, then they have no obligation, even though you maybe didn't find it out until 9.5 years into your home residence, which I've seen.
Okay, well, I just wondered if you had considered how this ordinance would mesh and work with that.
You know, I was concerned about it, that we might be trying to undercut that. And so I did put in that these would be minimum standards and shouldn't work to diminish the standards that have been established by the courts over the years.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Dallas and then Sean.
A couple of things. I was involved in one of these house cases where the foundation wasn't poured properly. It's actually up it's in Valley Hills. And the cost of presenting that case is prohibitive for most people. That's another issue for me. I think the cost of it, after you hired all the engineers and they dug out the foundation, they found what the problem was, even back then, was about $30,000. It was a case I had with Bill Downs before he became the federal judge. And the remedy was to jack up the whole house, move it off, tear the foundation out, pour in a new foundation, set that back down there, which was gonna cost $50,000. So nobody wants that kind of a lawsuit, but what, I keep forgetting, what's the name of the soil we have all around Casper that we all dread?
Bentonite soil.
Huh?
Bentonite soil.
Bentonite, yes, thank you, Bob. So we have terrible soil all around Casper, and the only thing, and I don't wanna put any regulations on anybody either, really. The regulation I would consider is a regulation that would have prevented this kind of a problem, man, because there's more than just this problem. There's problems like this that have happened all over Casper. This is the most recent and most famous one right now. But until I would hear that we were passing an ordinance that would cure the bentonite problem, I don't think I think it'd be
If
a
you wanna
waste of
cure
our
the
time.
bentonite problem, you can't
You
build
have to
hardly
move?
anywhere in town.
You have to move, right?
You
Your
build
dad
up
would
what
say
you-
we'd all have to leave,
Well, you can build by your house or my house, or.
and that would be it. huh?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would need to, there's so many people that are against this. I was watering my lawn, and one of the contractors saw me watering my lawn, got it. Boy, we don't need that, that'll cost us more and cost us more trouble, but I'm all for protecting our homeowners and our taxpayers, but, this one doesn't fit my complete idea of what we should be doing.
Sean and then Bob.
I agree with Chris and Bob. I don't think it's necessary, and I think the free market will take care of these problems better than we can.
Bob?
Just so we're clear, this is not an issue for commercial properties, if I understand it. We have certain requirements for commercial properties that are considerably more and cost a lot more. So this would strictly regulate something to do with the house, but, I don't know, maybe Dan could expand a little bit on the differences between that and a commercial property. For example, the state office building.
The commercial properties are under the IBC, which is International Building Code, and this is just under the International Residential Code. It is the difference for one and family
Thumbs. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if we could just get a penitentiary built in Rollins, it would stand up more than.
That isn't gonna happen. That isn't gonna happen.
Build it up here then.
There you go.
Build it down in Cheyenne.
They didn't talk to my dad.
The first time, the state was the contract.
Yeah.
That's a problem down there.
All right, moving on to the 1 cent projects. Anyway, thank you for indulging me. I had an event, one of our bigger events. We have 2 big events for my Gear Up program at Casper College. It's our National Gear Up Week event for all of our families, and then our banquet at the end of the year. It just fell on this day, so I apologize. But thank you.
You look good in a suit
Thank you.
rather than a t-shirt.
Appreciate it.
You look more mayorly.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
But thank you, Keneen, for filling in on a pinch. I appreciate it. So moving on to the 1 cent projects, it would seem to us that we need direction in that. Tom, do you want to give us a little?
Why is my line darkened, Tom? It's like it has a shroud.
Not intentionally, I assure you. Mr. Mayor, Council, you should have a packet in front of you that contains the multi-shaded document that is similar to what's up on the board. This reflects the most current numbers that we have based on the input that you have given us for each staffing for each organization. In addition, there is a draft resolution that hopefully upon your direction tonight we'll be able to complete and present to you at your next week's meeting for adoption, which will basically give guidance on how the 1% 16 is to be spent. Then you'll also find a correspondence from the Science Zone as well as the Casper Community Greenhouse Project.
So let's open up the conversation. I know there might have been some questions about the average versus the 5 votes. Do we want to start that conversation? Keneen?
Yes, what I was just gonna say is that we kind of have 3 things we need to tackle. One is the council, as the majority of the body, saying, yes, we are sticking to 3 million as the max? And if that's the case, then there are several of us that need to tone down our numbers. Are we still agreeing to the averages, which I think the majority said? So if
Not
we're not
anymore.
sticking to 3 million, that kind of messes up the averages, then we probably need to talk about 5 votes to move a project forward. I just want to throw that all out there again.
Chris and then Mike.
You know, pretty much across the board here. Well, initially it was 6 million that we were talking about. Staff's recommendation came in at 3 million, and that gained some traction as being the then top end number. I would recommend we don't mess with those. I no longer agree with the averages on a couple of them. We'd like to discuss those through the legalities.
Mike.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if, because I have I'm like Councilman Walsh, I'm not sure I agree with the average on some of these projects. I wonder if the easier way would be to just go down the line and take a vote on each one and see if a majority of the council, for instance, agrees that on the average of 220 for self-help center, then okay, we agree to that. If we don't agree to that, then we figure out something else. I don't know if that, that would take some time to go down the line on all these, but it might be a way of working our way through them.
Chris?
Well, we might take a look at it.
I'll get you done.
We'll have fewer that we disagree on, and just flip the judge's direction on it and say, throw out the ones you disagree on, we talk about those, we can make a list of that, might shorten going through it.
Does that sound like something?
To do what again?
Say that again, Chris.
I can tell you there's just a couple of them that, you know, and the averages are somewhat different than my numbers, but it's a lot of this is a compromise, and we work that out, but there's a couple that I don't feel are legal to fund, so I would just throw those out there, and maybe people got others, so then
Go
accept
along
the
with
rest.
that.
Okay. Let me get Dallas in here, and then I think we'll see if there's enough support on.
Well, I'm glad they finally agreed with me that averaging these wasn't a good idea. So, but the idea I did like was something Caneen said, I think we just ought to take the top 5 votes on each issue and call it good. Now, when you get into what I told Carter, I was willing to accept his recommendations all down the line, because pretty much you're accepting 97% of it. The other one is you want to feel good because you get to say something about 3 million, and he runs the whole table on the 55 to 60 million. So 3 million is kind of a drop in the bucket. He had one issue that he explained to me. It was why he recommended 0 for the library, and that's because it's a county facility. And the county doesn't seem to help us with our needs. And then when I hear what we're paying for rent for the police department over across the street in the municipal court, that even makes me more inclined to support more money for the police department to get a police department and municipal court built. So to hear what Carter's thinking is, which I guess comes from Tom as well, to dabble around with this 3 million, make yourselves feel good, go ahead and do it. I'm good with you if you want to do that. But I really think if you're going to accept 97% of what he's given you, which is to go with 3 million and to grant the other funds to the other entities in the city, seems almost like a waste of time. But I'll go either way.
Okay, so there was a suggestion that Mike brought up, further qualified by Chris, about looking at the ones that we may not legally.
I guess the ones that you're completely opposed opposed to.
Ones that you're completely
I
opposed
just
to.
told you why I was.
I apologize. Okay, I see what you're saying.
And that's not your numbers.
Yes, go ahead.
If I could just take a minute to explain what's on the board there. Not sure which direction you wanted to go. We put a spreadsheet together that basically has the same information that you're looking at now on the hard copy. Took a few columns out of there that to make it fit a little better. But you notice on the right, there's a couple of yellow columns. One indicates the number of funding recommendations for that project. And then the second column, which is not labeled, but will be the average, if you wanted to go with the average. And again, that's entirely up to you. But if you wanted to review that, and if a project did not have more than 4 votes, it would show up as a 0 in that last column. And then that column would have a running total of what the total of the allocations would be.
Do we have a copy of that we can see all in a piece of paper?
Not of that. That is something that hopefully is a benefit. We can make changes as we go through here. If you don't want to use the averages would be irrelevant. So that's certainly up to your direction.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, of you.
Okay.
Has the council agreed on the 97% that they've recommended? Because when Tom says this is something we're gonna vote on, it's my understanding, we control the entire package.
Mm-hmm.
So have we agreed with everything Carter said, but this $3 million? Because I haven't heard of
No.
any votes on that either.
No, I don't think we have.
Because you mentioned 6 million, because Bob voted based on 6 million. When I voted, I gave the people what they wanted. So now we're at an area where if I think you've got I believe there should be a vote on what of the management's recommendation are you willing to accept? And then are you willing to accept it all, which is take the 3 million and you guys go ahead and divvy that up, feel good about it. Because that sounds like that's where it's heading. And if that's what we're gonna do, shouldn't take 2 minutes to do that.
Good, Mike.
Mayor, when I made my recommendations, I was operating on the theory of, sort of on the 3 million, and that the other 3 million that would have made up that 6 million that we were originally talking about, that would spill over to the lower tier priority city projects that the manager and the city staff came up with. But, and that's just, I just say that by way of explaining, why some of my things were a little bit lower than others. But I'd really be interested to, start with Councilman Walsh's ideas about which ones of these he thinks are either illegal and should be discarded for that reason, and or just dead set opposed to, and we can maybe weed those out.
And I'd like to take a vote here on that.
Yeah.
Chris, do you want to
But my comment, Mr. Mayor, is are we agreeing that we're gonna just spend the 3 million? Because all this other doesn't make much sense. You go to what Chris said, once
Right.
you say, okay, we have 3 million, now we go through the list and spend the 3 million.
So let's back up for 1 second, and I'm going to get Chris. Do we want to agree on just $3 million? I guess that's one of the items on here. I know Keneen had brought up just a second ago. One of the issues we probably need to decide: are we agreeing on just $3 million? I guess.
And my statement with the manager last week was that I am going to accept his entire recommendation, so.
Okay, so that fails.
So then all of his recommendations fail because you have to get money somewhere from something else that you like, or that he's recommended, to bring this into whatever number. So if Councilman Walsh has a number that we should use, if it's 6 million or whatever, I think that needs to be voted on. But then you've got to ask Tom, how do you equalize this money?
As our budget.
Chris, go ahead.
So we were given a list of the city's ideas on their priority for it, told that would come in the future. It's ridiculous to think that we don't vote, that we don't decide every cent of where this goes. Because I know Mr. Beamer doesn't get $30 million to go out and buy what he wants, not without approval coming through here. So this is one aspect of it. when it first came out, the $6 million was that estimated, was the leftover on an estimate on what might be there. Maybe more, it might be less. So yes, of course, we vote on everything that's spent, and this is an aspect of it. I would like to start doing that.
Well, do you have an idea of, do you have a number? Do you have 6 million or 10 million, or you just want to add it up at the end, once you?
I think Tom can answer.
I mean, I'm just curious what we're spending.
Yeah, just to provide hopefully a little clarification on this. The recommendations from administration was for $3 million. You'll recall that about $4 million had been pulled out of that for some other projects. Assuming a $3 million allocation, that would leave about $2.3 million left to spend on second tier projects. So whatever goes beyond $3 million would cut into that $2.3 million. So the margin you're dealing with off a $3 million figure without cutting into other tier 1 projects is the $2.3 million.
So if we spend 8 million, we'd be cutting into tier 1 projects.
Sean and then Kenny.
I think if we went with Kaneen's suggestion of if it doesn't have 5 votes, take it off, it'll whittle down the number by itself.
I think if we follow through with Chris's suggestion and that.
Yeah, if we combine both
weed out a
those
lot of
suggestions.
Yeah, can we scroll through this though and see, because we don't have this data in front of us.
We have all of the entities.
We don't have the 2 right columns.
Right, and that's kind of an interactive document, so if you make changes in funding of anything, it'll change those. We just scroll down to the bottom. Right now, based on averages and based on projects that did not receive more than 4 votes, in my eyesight, so I get to be the bottom on the left, on the right-hand column in yellow. Can you read? I don't. So I went down here.
It's 3.2.
Yeah, call it 3.3 for ducks.
Correct. The average right now of everything is the 3.859 million. There you go. If you take out the ones that don't have at least 5 council members recommending funding, that balance right now would be 3.276 million.
So without the 5 votes, we're at 3.2 then, 3.3 roughly,
Correct.
if we go in that direction. So
I like that.
can we do that? Can we agree on some? Well, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if there truly are items on there that we're trying to fund that do not meet the law, I'm assuming we're all comfortable removing those. Are there some of those still up there?
John, do you know if there are some that are still up there?
You know, we
That
talked
we
about, we talked about the lyric last week, and I still have significant concerns about that. It's not a human service agency, it's not a program that's up and running, and it's construction costs. We don't own that, so I have some concerns about that. I think the thought process was that it might fit within the advertising, furthering industrial development, or encouraging exhibits, affairs, exposition, and conventions, but not even being up and running yet, just needing it for construction would seem to be a real question in my mind. So I would suggest to you that probably wouldn't qualify now. And I don't want to say legality or that, because I think sometimes there's a negative connotation. I've had some other organizations call and say, why do you say that we're illegal? I'm not saying they're illegal, we're just saying that they don't seem to qualify this year given their background. And the request with the advertising statutes, no appropriation may be made for the express rate of any private citizen, firm, or corporation. And so, I mean, we really need to have a good city reason for spending $200,000 or whatever for advertising, for $2 million for $200,000 for fairs, expositions, or conventions. It seems to me if you're going to be in the spirit of the statute, consistent with the statutory language, that would be one that I would be looking at, that I would have some concerns about.
Do you have concerns about the library? Because we don't own it, it's a county facility.
I would think that we made it argument of there is a way typically for governmental entities that we can, there is an exception for that, I don't have it right here in front of me, but there is a bit of an exception to help fund governmental agencies, or kind of co-governmental agencies. But I don't have that statute right now. But I thought that there was no funding for the library, the last I saw of the papers, there was no funding
At all?
from us.
Before I move on to that, I just wanna know, are there any other projects that you feel are, cause I just wanna make sure we're making good legal decisions.
Yeah, and I think, as far as I know, the other ones, you know, either the one that I would say no to, they have not been funded. So, you know, given that, and the one that I was more concerned about, just because it is more for construction than delivery.
Mike?
Mr. Mayor, I would just suggest that we start this
Agreed.
process instead of
Right,
continuing
and-
to just talk around it.
So is there support to move it to 5 votes?
What it requires.
Requires? Okay.
So now we're in the yellow column.
So now we're in the yellow column, yep.
So. our
That's the
average-
averages?
Our
The
average.
far right-hand column is the average for the ones that have 5 votes, if I
Correct.
understood it
Correct.
correctly.
Yeah, and so then if you drop the lyric off, it'll put us right about 3 million.
No, is it
So what has not, then what's been
We don't
removed
have
from
this whole
that?
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
She's
That's
doing this
what I
in
work with.
real time for us, so.
I know, but
I know, but if I'm looking at one side and I don't know what it's correlating to on the other side, I'm not gonna vote on it.
Well, and the other thing that I would question about this is, that, you know, some of those, you know, while some of us, in essence, voted for, you know, Joshua's Storehouse, let's say, or any of these projects, and at a certain level, but then we might not really agree at what the average comes out at, and might wanna discuss those. And so that's the only hiccup that
Well,
I
that's
see.
the 5, that kicked out my recommendation and Bob's, because it's the top 5
Well,
of the
yeah,
majority.
but for instance, there, you know, like the self-help center, I suggested 150, that average comes to 220. Now, for instance, let's say if I say, well, I'm in at 150, but I'm not in at 220.
Oh, you wanna vote on that, so you don't wanna accept the 5 top, you don't wanna accept the
Well, I'm not
averages?
sure that it's fair to say that 9 people voted, for instance, for 220,000 there.
But it takes 5, we've agreed that 5 people can carry it.
Well-
That is an average of the 5 people, right there.
Well, yeah, if we just go to a strict average.
Right.
As you were worrying about last time. And so that's why I really think we need to a little bit get down in the weeds and go through these things to see if everybody's okay with, you know, if we're okay with that average number on these things instead of
So Mike,
just
you're
taking a
saying,
blanket.
so to understand you better, you're wanting for us to go down and look at each one of those that have come down to the to what we're looking at now and saying, are we okay with certain ones on there?
Yeah.
Is what you're asking.
That's what I would suggest.
Council, where do you feel about that?
After the illegal one's been removed and the ones that didn't get 5 votes are removed, then I
Right.
think we should negotiate.
Then, I think that's what Mike's
Well,
suggesting maybe.
Well, sort of, and you know, for instance, on the lyric,
I'm
I
saying
would
wait a
still
minute.
argue that we could, that fits into the statute.
Okay.
With the greatest deference to Mr. Henley's legal opinion on it, I think that the statute's broad enough that would fit in there.
Okay. Chris?
Let's either start from the top and go down, or go through eliminated ones. Let's do something.
So let's start from the top. Self-help center. We can start just moving forward with the first one. Does anybody have any issues, problems? How does everybody feel about that one? Any questions? Thumbs up. Casper Mountain Ski Patrol, 3,000. Anybody have any issues with that? Nope. Let's see. UW Extension, that's 60.
The question that I had about that was, you know, when we were talking about them in the general budget, it seemed that there were, some of them they were coming in and saying, well, this is sort of like a pass-through money or something like that. Am I remembering any of that correctly, or?
I
can't
Right.
remember.
We do have a contract with them.
We have a contract, yeah.
Yeah, and so is this 60,000, is that gonna fit within that contract?
Well, in my opinion, it does, because, the university was picking up the bennies, and I don't think they make 60 grand. I don't think they're paying her 60 grand without bennies, so.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
I'm really familiar with that contract because it does help us out in the Parks Department. So that's the Master Gardener program. Recall that's for Donna Hoffman's position.
Right.
And so that does come to the tune of $100,000. So she does take a burden off of the city by providing that feature, if you will. And it is a three-way allocation. So UW pays for the benefits and the training for her in that position, and the materials, and then they're also off the fairgrounds, so they provide the building as well. The county picks up basically a half of her salary, and then the city traditionally has picked up the other half of the salary. So it is a three-way split.
Which would amount to 100, our share of that?
Yes,
split?
correct, over the 4 years. So
Yeah, over the 4
$25,000 per
years.
year.
Yeah. So I'd like to see that at the 100,000.
I can agree with that. Mine was at 0. You put me on for 100,000.
You wanna do that?
Is that okay?
I don't know if it is, I don't know how it's all gonna come out. The staff recommendation was 100,000, so I guess I would agree with it. Because I'm gonna go down with the staff's recommendation on all but a couple of these.
Okay, so we're gonna change Laird to 100,000?
I think he already was. He was at,
Yeah.
he was 103.
103.
Why are we 103 when they asked 100?
That is, cause I've never said 103, but.
Well, I think they asked for 103, but
They did
the
it.
staff recommended 100.
Oh, okay.
Because what that reflects, what my deal reflects is what everybody asked for.
Okay.
Is there any other thoughts about that one? Sean changed his. Anything else? Okay, let's move forward.
So we gotta do a thumbs up on that one, or are we yes on that now?
Well, it has 5 votes, but Sean just put in 100,000, so I mean it moved. It's still.
Move to 71.
Yeah, it just moved to 71 basically.
Can they still run the program?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, that's a good question. I mean, they would have to find a way to probably find the shortfall, because it is a salary, it is over a 4-year period of time. So they'd have to find a way to make up to 72,000 to get it to 100,000, or the contract would be cut in duration, where it's no longer gonna be a 4-year contract. We say, hey, we got funding for whatever that prorates out to 3.6 years.
For all those reasons, I'd like to see that at 100.
So Flora, you can change mine to 100,000.
Plus,
Whatever they asked
plus,
for.
Mr. Mayor, I think that the management took all this into account. When you look at the staff's recommendations, I think that he hit certain numbers right on the money based upon previous experience.
Right.
Now, there's a couple things that he kicked out, such as the Natrona
It's all
County
you,
Public
Chris.
Library, whatever.
All right.
We'll get to the library next.
Chris, where do you stand on that?
100.
Okay. Did you hear that, Fleur? Chris said 100.
On the extension.
Yeah.
That's 0. Forgot the 1.
Did you put me in for 3 zeros?
Fleur, and if we need to make up that extra $6, just you can put mine for 106,000 if you need to. So it makes it an even 100,000.
Is,
Or no,
Yeah, go ahead and
Oh,
put
yeah.
6 on mine, Fleur. Hopkins for 6.
$6 or
6,000.
6,000. Sorry.
No.
So
You're gonna have to
61.
go
Make
to
mine
100,000.
go from 55 in mine to 61.
That's not gonna make a big difference
Yeah.
though.
Oh.
Overall,
Maybe-
I was taking an average.
100,000.
You have to go.
I got an
by that.
idea. Streamline it, make them all $100,000, let's move on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Moving on. Library. So the average was 289, and it had enough votes. Are we good with that number for the library? Is everybody good?
Well, you know, the library is a institution that probably predominantly caters to the citizenry that the Constitution, the statutes require us to cater to. The manager of the library, I had a nice chat with her, and then she came over and talked to Carter, and I don't know what the result of that was, but I was enlightened by the amount of things they do for the citizens of the city, even though it's owned by the county. And
Are you arguing that we should do more than 289?
that is one that I changed my mind on, yes, because I think Chris's number was more in line with what he came up with. I'd like to see them get what they're asking for, because it's that institution touches everybody in the city, and they're catering to a lot of folks that need help. And
Fleur, it's not gonna change, it might change a little bit, you can put me down for 100,000 for NCPL.
And Mr. Mayor, the reason I was only at 162 on that was what they had asked for as a share from us about the bookmobile.
Right.
But
it's gonna dent them to give them 289 when they're requesting 962. It's because they're not gonna get the money from the county, I don't think.
So,
I'm gonna have it.
Yeah.
so does anybody, I know Dallas is advocating for more, is anybody willing to support that, back that? Where do we move forward? We'll support, okay. CASA. Right, is that next? Yep. They only have 12,000 out of the request for 20,000. Any thoughts?
I think we should get their full amount, 20,000.
How do everybody feel about CASA getting their full amount?
That was my recommendation.
Is there support for CASA to get 20,000?
I agree with 20,000.
Okay, I'm okay with it.
Change mine too.
What are we missing? Bob, would you be willing to move yours?
No,
No?
You have Bob up there for 20,000?
should be zero.
Should be zero.
that's where I was on that, but
Mike, you're not.
I can, if you guys want to give them the 20,000 average, I can live with that.
Okay. So Huber, 20,000? We're still not there though.
It's close.
So that becomes a yes?
Yep.
Okay. Mercer Family Resource Center, everybody feel good about that? Okay, moving on. Child Advocacy Project, they got 138, everybody good about that one? Any changes? Joshua Storehouse, any changes there?
It's not funded, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking, oh, never mind, I apologize. Okay,
It didn't quite make it.
didn't make it.
It
Does
didn't.
anybody wants to?
Neither did sports
Does
and
anybody
lines.
want to change on Joshua's?
It didn't. It didn't make the 10,000.
Didn't make
Didn't
it.
make
Didn't make,
5 votes.
didn't get 5 votes.
Oh.
Okay,
Well, that's just a minute. That's that's a place.
Helps the poor.
If you go over there and see who comes in there, those people need that food. They just do. 25,000 isn't anything. But if you haven't been over there and witnessed what goes on there on a morningly basis, it's probably kind of hard to imagine the people and how they react when they get this bag of food and take it home.
I'll change mine on that to 10,000. Because there were some of these that I had zeroed that I wanted to hear what everybody else thought, and that's why I was willing to talk.
so you said change yours to 10? Did you hear that, Fleur?
Yep.
Okay.
Make a Hopkins for 10, vote please.
I'll agree to I'll agree to anything because it's a needed situation.
So we're still going to win $1,189.
Yeah.
Well, 13,000.
That's better.
Well, but it gives them the 5 votes to get some.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Casper Sports Alliance didn't get anything. Youth Crisis.
We got 5 votes.
Oh, they did? Oh, they did. I'm sorry. I apologize. Anything on the Casper Sports Alliance? They asked for 37.
What was it for again?
What was the Sports Alliance for?
It was for marketing, sports events coming into
Oh,
town.
They wanted to pay judges and buy medals and.
Yeah, I was better spent on the poor and kids.
So they 37. Is everybody okay with where that's at?
They can get funding from CACBB
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That'll be helpful.
Any other comments on the Sports Alliance? Youth Crisis Center. Looks like everybody voted for it. But is that 261 for the average? How does everybody feel about that? Chris?
Youth Crisis Center is a critical function for law enforcement. You can't take most juveniles to the juvenile detention center.
Yeah, it's a good alternative.
I agree.
Absent
They don't have any
absent
place to
having
go.
that,
It's either
it's
your
you
place
return
or
them
that
home
place.
Yep.
or
That's why I
come up
fully-
with your best bad guess.
That's why I
So
fully
I think
funded
they
it.
have to, I'd like to see them fully funded.
Is anybody willing to look at that? I just echoed that. That's why I fully funded
Well,
it.
it's
Just-
recommended by the staff to fully fund it, so I'm.
I'll
going on
change
there.
to that 330.
You can put mine at 330 as well. Yeah. Where is it? Oh, it's up at the top.
Just waiting for Fleur to get it all put in there so we can look at the average.
Is that the right one? That's Morgan's. These are,
I guess it's been about 80% of it.
What do you think about 80%, Chris?
Take what we can get.
Okay.
So that comes to 279 then?
Yep.
Let's see. Historic Trail Center didn't get anything. Condoma didn't get anything. Big Brothers Big Sisters. They requested 270 and they got 152. Anything on that one?
which one?
Big Brothers Big Sister, line 13. Nothing. Okay. So that stays that way, Fleur. CDC, Child Development Center. 85, I think that's pretty good, isn't it? Unless somebody wants to change it. Okay. Iris House didn't get any, did not. 1, 2, 3. Does anybody want to change anything for Iris House? Okay, Interfaith, they requested 240, but they got 136. Anybody want to change that?
Was that the one where we give money to the churches? that they need
Well, the
for
churches give them the money. Actually, it's a small group of churches now.
But it's again for food for the poor, isn't it?
It can be for that, but it can also be for anything from power, the power bill
I know
to
they needed some
water.
refrigerators for one of these places that.
Yeah,
for the
they
poor.
they kind of do anything for those that are in poverty. Yeah,
That one has healthcare for the homeless.
It can be gas money.
yeah, it could be gas
I
money
think-
too. Bus tickets to get back home or something.
Yeah.
It's been all kinds of. Okay. Casper Family Connections didn't get it. Oh, wait a minute. 1, 2. Yep, nope. Anybody want to change on the Family Connections? Anybody want to change on the Casper Family YMCA? There was only 2 votes for that. Okay. Natrona County Meals on Wheels, they asked for 35 and they got 34.7. Somebody want to change that, or they feel everybody good about that? Okay. Okay, and we struck the lyric, right?
Well,
Or do we want to talk about that for a second? Go ahead, Mike. You have a.
I think that'd be a good investment. You know, you guys have heard me say before that I'm not sure that I really have felt that the investments in that area around David Street and that were the greatest things, but we're heavily enough invested in that area now that I think this is, you know, to me, this just makes sense to give those guys a shot in the arm and help them out now. I've looked at the statute and the Constitution. I think that there's adequate enough wiggle room in that language that, that we could, you know, that we could make that work legally. It reminds me of several years ago, the county, there was a proposal that the county hire a county manager, and not to sidetrack this discussion or anything, but the county sent a letter to the Attorney General asking for an Attorney General's opinion that basically was, this is illegal for us to do this, isn't it? And, you know, depending on how you ask the question, yeah, you can get the answer that you want. You know, this is one of those things that I'd say it'd be worth, you know, let's do it and ask for forgiveness later if we get in trouble over it.
Sean and then Bob.
I can't believe
I
that
just
came from a.
don't wanna
former
get in the
judge.
habit of paying off other people's mortgages.
There was a
Hold on one second, let me get Bob.
Well,
and
I mean, okay.
then you can talk to Bob.
I
Go ahead,
thought
Bob.
you nodded at me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I kind of, these guys have really put their best foot forward, and I know as long as some of us have been on council, they have tried to get a performing arts center somewhere downtown. And, you know, finally within the last few years, they've got their ducks in a row to get this building, and they're putting their heart and soul into it. And in fact, they can generate revenues now. They were never really able to do that, and they do have some commitments from some people to use it. It's being used quite a bit for receptions and so forth. And we really don't have a good place for our symphony orchestra to perform. I'm not saying that the NC Auditorium is not a great place, but it's an NC Auditorium that belongs to the high school first, and so they're left begging to get dates to use it. And that's difficult from a performance standpoint for a symphony orchestra. So I think this being development in OYD, and I know you guys know OYD is close to my heart, but it just makes for more going on downtown, and in the long run, it's good for Casper to do that. So I still would ask for your support to try and get something done for these folks.
Sean and then, or excuse me, Dallas and then Sean.
Well, I agreed with everything you said, Bob, except one thing, and that is whether it's legal or not. It's a lovely project. I dearly would like to see that project. But when I first came on the council, our former city attorney, Lubin, gave me one of his memos that he'd given to Patterson, telling him something was illegal about giving money to these private institutions of this nature. And it was done, I think, over his objection. But we have to start following the law sometime. And, you know, I'm going to accept Mr. Henley's legal opinion unless I could have someone overrule it that saw something maybe that he missed. I'd love to give him the money. But I just can't feel comfortable doing that when our city attorney's telling us that he doesn't think it's legal. And I haven't researched it myself. I've quit doing that since he came to work here. But I do know some things that Lubin advised, and certain councils passed it through anyway. I just don't think you ought to keep doing that.
Sean.
I agree that I don't think it's legal, and I have a really hard time giving them hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we can't give Joshua Storehouse $25,000 for food for the poor.
Well, we've made some fairly significant amounts of money available to aid the poor in that. You know, the statute says encouraging the city can encourage exhibits at fairs, expositions, and conventions. And you know, if you can't have, you know, this clearly could be part of an exhibition or a convention. And if having this kind of a facility is not encouraging something that could fit into encouraging exhibitions or conventions, I don't know what would be. I don't think that would be a fair reading of that statute to so narrowly construe it that while you can only give money if it's the Shrine Convention or if it's the Democratic Convention or something like that, I don't think that requires that it has to be a specific convention or exposition, because that just wouldn't make any sense. But if you know, okay, here we're gonna have a facility that'll be available for these kind of things, then, you know, that to me is a reasonable reading of that statute. That's why I think that, you know, that we've got some wiggle room to operate in there.
So, Sean went to the bathroom, he's gonna see if there's support to keep it
You
on.
might get another lawyer on the next go around, and then you'll have another legal opinion. And then
Yes.
Yeah, but
you
you're
guys-
running away. So,
You know, one of the things we can do, if I may.
Yeah, you bet you could, Bob.
It's not somebody else. If I may, we have never actually made an accounting for people where the money goes when we give them grant. These people were honest enough to tell us exactly what they're gonna do with it. On the other hand, we have people that we know have gotten money, and we really don't have any audit trail or any ability to audit where that money went. If we give Joe Blow's great company that does good things for the poor money, we don't know that they didn't go out and buy a brand new Mercedes van when they could have bought a used pickup. And we don't know that. So I don't think that it's really that arguable that if they want to apply to their mortgage, I'm not that picky about it. But the bottom line is, it's a help to these people that have really tried and put something together in the last 10 years to get something done,
So, I guess, need to see if there's a thumbs up to keep the lyric on there, after everybody's had a chance to speak about it, to be able to do that.
I mean,
I'm doing it based on legal advice. I think it's a wonderful, beautiful project. I agree with Bob on that, but
I'm gonna be a little, so are we, did it go?
No.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, I'm gonna be finished because I'm not voting for this if it goes through. It's none of it, so.
Yeah.
you're what?
I said I wouldn't vote for any of it if that had passed.
You're kind of a tough
Because it's all
guy.
one package, you know, it comes out there.
You know, I gave him
Well,
a
make an
hundred,
amendment.
I know this is after the vote, I gave him 100,000. I love what the lyric does, but I kind of agree where we're at with Sean, and twofold. One is the,
Isn't any different than Kadoma, buying them the Johnny J's lot up there. I mean, it's the same thing.
so that comes out as a zero.
yeah, that would be taken out.
I agree with you, Sean, we ought to give 25,000 to Joshua. I mean, they just help so many people that are in need.
Okay, moving on. Community action asked for 100. They averaged out to 66. Anybody want to change that? Strike that? All good. Kenny?
I guess I'll make the legality pitch if we've got concerns about following federal regulations and reporting. That sounds like a scary funding prospect to me.
Community action?
Mhm.
Why is that? I don't get it. I'm not, I saw the staff recommended. So is there some problem with it, Mr. Mayor?
I think there's been some issues in the past.
We had an email that kind of outlined some of it, and I don't remember the email, but I don't know if Liz recalls the email off the top of her head.
What do they use the money for?
I'm not even sure what.
They give it to other charities.
Your Honor, yes,
Yeah.
they were going to utilize it for housing in their application. We've got concerns on one of the grants that they're pursuing in the name of Life Steps, which contradicts what the Housing Authority has been doing with the Life Steps Campus House. And that has been a significant concern of staff. And then most recently, what staff provided to Mr. Napier was a write-up about some ongoing concerns, findings, if you will, with the HUD report. They were submitted in that, and it comes out in those quarterly reports that you all receive. And I know those are thick, but they are highlighted in red, and this is one of the excerpts that came directly from one of the reports that came to you all, that staff took the time to go over. So it's nothing that you would not have seen and read in depth, but again, that is a very lengthy report. But there were repeated issues with reports from HUD on their reporting.
Chris?
Liz, you don't have to stand up. Isn't this an area that you're willing and prepared to take over if there's a vacuum? Isn't that what we talked about earlier?
Your Honor, members of council, that was an area that we felt that we would work with the other social service agencies, look at the needs out there in the community. We have a quarterly meeting with those agencies ourselves, and Joy Clark leads that. Carter is in those meetings. I know in the past, Janine has been a part of that. You all are welcome to attend, but we sit down and look at what the needs are in the community from the agencies who report them to us, and we bring forward recommendations to council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like something from the city attorney to tell me whether this is legal or not before I vote on it.
One second, John, I've got Chris got to say something.
Can you put mine at 0, please?
Fleur, you can put mine at 0 too.
You can put mine at 0 too until I get further information.
That takes it.
And the same with me.
Huber's a 0 too, Fleur.
I should pull it from the table, right?
And I think that just pulls it. Dallas,
I'm 0.
is it okay? Do you still want John?
No,
It takes-
You're good.
So we're
taken
down
care
to
of.
4 now, so they're out altogether.
It might be.
I didn't know
it
if you
might
want an
be
explanation still.
But it might be a good idea to know it,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, if they come wanting us to put it back in.
Okay, moving on. Seat House. 155 was the request. 145 was the average. Do we want to change anything to move to that? Okay, moving on. Poverty resistance.
Is that 0? See, that's just another.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
Is it 0? Is it off? I can't read.
Yeah, it's only 4 votes.
Oh, it was. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was reading. I'm sorry.
I just want to point out that there is, we see those come off, the food bank is there, and that is more like the distribution point for a lot
Agreed.
of these things, so fund that one, the rest of these
Get it?
aren't shut down.
Yeah.
If we're gonna have a conversation, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that we should give them their money, because here again, it's another deal that involves food, to people who need food, and it's done a great job over the years from what I've seen of it, unless somebody has some criticism I've never heard. I don't understand why somebody wouldn't wanna fund it. I must have missed it somehow.
I'll fill you in later.
Part of,
Huh?
Fill you in later.
part of my feeling on that was that I think that a large part of their request was just for salaries and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
That's true? Is that a truth? You
That's
guys-
what they said in their application.
Has code enforcement been over there lately to clear out the sidewalks again?
Wasn't
Community
yesterday.
action.
I'm just gonna say for the record, I'm getting tired of driving by seeing all the crap on the sidewalk.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So poverty resistance is at 0?
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep reading staff recommendation. I apologize. Thank you so much.
I'd, on the food bank, I'd like to just suggest that we round that up to 20,000.
To the Rockies.
Yeah,
You can put in whatever amount you want.
Hold on. Have we done the Wyoming Food for Thought project
No,
yet?
we're on number 24.
We are on 24.
We're above it.
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry. I
That's
was
okay.
looking at
Let's move forward to the Wyoming Food for Thought project.
So
Sorry,
again,
Tom was
with a
getting
lot
low.
of salaries.
165 was their request. And they got 78. Does anybody want to change that? Just change that. Okay. Now we're moving to the food bank of the Rockies.
Can I make a pitch for them?
You betcha.
I'd recommend giving them everything they ask because they are that that distribution center for all the rest of it.
That's where all the rest of them get their food.
Who's the jerk that only did 15,000?
How much did they ask for 20 or did they ask for more?
Yes, for 20.
They asked for 20, yeah.
I
Fleur
agree,
put me-
I agree to give them the 20.
Yeah.
Florida put me for 20,000.
And last time we bought them a $150,000 refrigerated truck, as I recall.
Well, and that's why I went with 15, but I'm willing to go take it so they can get 20.
Yeah. So,
United Way, 38.6 is their full request. They had 15. Anybody have any heartburn about that, or they want to move anything?
Is that another salary one?
It looks like it. Yeah, that's what the description says on it.
The staff recommended 0.
Leave as is. Okay, moving on. Boys and Girls Club requested 445. Theirs came to 229. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Moving on. DDA, their request was 23.8, and they got 14. Anybody want to change anything?
For the snow removal.
It's a snow removal
they
equipment.
can buy a good used tractor for 14.
Do they need that? I asked
Yeah, they will
Kevin.
this winter. Yeah.
We don't have snow removal equipment already for the city itself.
They don't do the
Why would we
sidewalks.
donate it to them?
Yeah.
They don't do my driveway.
Okay. Central Wyoming Hospice, full request is 180 and the average is 131. Anybody want to change that or anything?
What did they say here?
Good group.
And it's operations and equipment.
That's what it is.
Yeah, they were funded previously through CAP is what it said.
You can put me in for 180.
I would like to see it fully
Chris
Yeah.
Chris is putting the pitch for fully funded.
I'll agree with Chris on
You can put me in for 180 on that.
John, same here.
Fleur, you can put me at 180.
And
What's that change us to?
Should be pretty darn close.
153.
153.
Where's it at?
Top.
Charlie's the one on that.
And I think Charlie would want us to. Let's just go ahead and put that in there for him. Is that legal, John?
Only
That
if
might
you're-
be, that might be way
Is that-
outside.
Only if you're the mayor.
Let's just push the envelope, John.
Only if you're the mayor can you do that.
Okay. Moving on. Biathlon Club didn't get enough, right? No. Okay.
So can we talk about that for just a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I got all these emails about this biathlon and how,
Well,
so is what they're saying all true and it's all on our property and everything else?
Well, we gave them over 900,000, or right about $900,000 to build that facility
Yeah.
last time.
You want to talk about that since you've chatted with a couple of them?
Sure can if like.
You just want to just mention that a little bit?
Sure.
Does anybody want to give them any money?
I just wondered why they got zeroed out if it's on our property and we've been.
I know this is going to take more time. I know that you only got one person who voted for it or allocated money, but John, you know a little bit about the MOU, just to get that cleared up.
Just a little bit, we had a lease, it's 400 acres of county property, 200 acres of city property. The city's, we're gonna have shooting on it, we don't wanna have shooting on our property, I believe was one of the reasons. There's a prohibition about that or something, so if the county was leasing the property from us, that lease hasn't been executed because the county hasn't gotten the MOU or approved the MOU from the biathlon club, so it's been slow in that regard. And in addition, again, I don't know if the request was for, it's certainly not a social service agency. They've been funded in the past, they've been given access to property. Just trying to figure out what it would go under, because it is a private organization. So I'm just thinking that again, it's one of those tough ones to call. And that was my conversation with Ms. Roser today, is that we went through the statutes and the Constitution, I just said, it's looking like this really doesn't follow.
I may have to reread those. I might start agreeing with Mike when you're cutting into one of these I like, you know.
That's a scary thought.
Alrighty. Moving on. Thanks, John.
I still don't know which of us is insulted by someone calling us.
No,
crazy.
I know. Maybe both of us.
Science zone, amount requested was a little over $1 million, and the average was 334, and they had 5 votes. Anybody wanting to change that average?
Is that a private deal as well?
Yeah, if we can't fit the lyric into that, I don't know how the science zone fits in.
I did wonder about
I
that.
think there were two kind of ways I think that was backed into. One is that they do provide free services. It's an ongoing concern for one thing. You actually do have them bringing people in and providing free services to the poor with their scholarships and trade day fairs and things of that nature where they're opened up for free. So it has the constitutional basis under that provision, but also it's much more close, it seems to me, under the 1511 for advertising, providing expositions and the like, because they are an actual going concern. They do have things that people can go to and see right now.
I think it's a good thing to support for our youth in Casper, and especially for
The
STEM.
school district kids use it a lot.
They do, and it's huge STEM stuff that they do. So I think it's really critical to Casper.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Nobody wants to change their.
Oh, sorry. Does anybody want to change anything?
It's really
For the
critical.
children, people, the children.
STEM.
All right. Casper Community Greenhouse didn't. I don't know if everybody got the letters from her. I don't know if anybody read that or not. Okay, moving on. Restorative justice. No. Anybody want to change anything on restorative justice?
Mike, he might want to
Go for Mike.
Well, like I say, I think that the city does need to get into the probation business, but then we run into the problem of, do we want to pay salaries out of the 1 cent, which I don't think
tough,
we
yeah.
should be. I think that should be a general fund.
Yeah.
I think, isn't that what we're doing? That's why I zeroed mine out, is because it was coming from the general fund, right?
Yeah. Yep. Central Wyoming Senior Services, their request was 220. They're getting 185. Anybody interested in wanting to up that to average? At all? Kenny?
I'll just make a pitch that the amount of money they spend per person, I don't remember the exact number, but I just want to say it was like $1 or $2. At my office, it's $8 per person. So those guys
They're getting a deal.
are doing a dang good job saving money, feeding people. But that also suffers quality, just so you guys know. I mean, you guys can put whatever numbers you want, but
It'd be
I
nice
was
if it was
impressed.
maxed. It'd be nice if it was the max numbers.
I mean, the fact that they can feed people for that's a miracle, so.
And that's over 4 years.
Well, if we've saved 40,000, we could actually give it to them. You can change mine to the staff recommendation.
You can
Laura.
change mine to 220 also.
Bob, how does your heart feel about this?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is, you go over there and you can buy lunch too for $5. And I realize it's a bargain, but, you know, there's people that drive over there every day. And, I'm one of the old guys. And, you know, I can afford $5 too, but I can eat at home for about the same price.
Okay.
So I just don't,
You're good where you're at.
yeah.
Okay.
We've actually helped them a lot. It's not like we've never given them money before we built the building.
Well, they've paid taxes their whole lives and they've stuck around here and all that. I don't, closer I get to
That whole
them,
greatest
Bob, the more-
generation thing took Normandy, saved the world.
Exactly.
There's those things. Preserved our entire way of life.
There was a great deal on Facebook you would have loved. It shows this Marine, and he's got a wounded soldier in one arm and a machine gun in the other, and he's got a look on his face you'd be proud of. It says, "That's the old fart that's now wearing the VFW hat. You should thank him."
Yes.
Okay, Arkham Natrona County, their request was, sorry, lost my spot, 60,000, and they got 43. Anybody want to change anything on that?
I'd go for, making mine 40. Wait a minute, is that, I can't read where I am up there on that.
You're at 20, one more on.
Yeah, I think I'm at 20, as I recall. Make that 40.
Fleur, will you make mine 60?
I'm sorry, you want yours to be what?
60.
60? Councilman Hopkins said 40?
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Wyoming Rescue Mission. Their request was 200, and they got 116. Anybody want to change anything on theirs?
We worked that over to last meeting, didn't we? Or at some meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we're good on that one, aren't we? Okay, we talked that one. Okay. Anybody want to change anything for Natrona County Health?
Now, is that, are we obligated to fund part of that?
That would,
So we already fund them, don't we?
Yes.
By, I think like 400,000 or 500,000.
500,000
Yeah.
every year.
Every year.
So what do they
Out
want?
of the general fund.
So this looks like vehicles and furniture
The
is what they
staff,
were
the
requesting.
staff recommendation was 0 on that one. Because they are a county agency and they do get funding.
Yeah, I'll take mine to 0.
Well, but am I correct that I thought even though it says here Natrona County Health, I thought that was Casper and Natrona County.
It's,
We already
it's the
fund
Casper
them.
Natrona
We fund them 500,000 already. Is that per year?
per year.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else? Okay.
I've got 2 that, my numbers aren't adding up. I hate to ask,
No, you're
Mr.
good.
Mayor, but I would like to go back to senior services. I'd give them like 200. Hopkins for 200 for senior services, line 34. Because my numbers are,
Well, now that's doing a little better good for him. Thanks, Bob.
I'll take you to
When you
lunch
get
then.
as old as I am, you'll be happy.
we still pay our way.
With
What's our
less.
total then?
Yeah, what is our fund? Blind is it bad?
3,052,000.
Not bad.
Guys
Fine
did
with
what
that
the manager
number.
wanted. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Tom, you have anything you want to add?
We got this resolution.
Yeah, the resolution will put the new numbers, I think it's still 3 million now. So
Oh, this will change.
this will change, that was just the reference point, so that will change. The other outstanding issue yet, if you folks wanted to tackle it tonight, would be, that still leaves about $2.3 million that could be used toward the tier 2 projects that have been submitted. We don't necessarily need that tonight, I think we can get through this, the resolution part, but if you want to, I do have the individual requests, staff is here, if you want to tackle tonight to try to allocate another
Is there a
2.3
staff recommendation what to do with the 2.3?
No, there's not.
I'd
I'm
like
sure
to-
every staff member has a recommendation.
I want to see the general staff recommendation, so if we don't need to do it tonight,
So let's first, instead of doing it tonight, maybe we can look at them later.
So
Okay.
you'd like to have it similar to this, the staff recommendation or what?
Right, before we leave this subject, I wonder, I guess I'd just like to throw it out there that, you know, we've assumed for our best estimates, we're gonna get to the tune of $58 million over the 4-year period. When I go back and I add up, look at the averages, literally going back forever, well, it's been modified by how long you run the 1 cent and some up and down years. We're probably still looking at $13 to $15 million. And last term, we got $68 million. Now, 58 to 68, that was about a 15 to 20% difference. And I guess what I'm asking is that would it be reasonable for us to put together, quote, a non-binding resolution that we would prefer that people send any excess dollars to be reallocated by the city and/or be divided in some respect between our opportunity fund and our perpetual care fund? Is there any kind of a?
No, I think that's an excellent idea. Remember, we talked about that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if
And
we're.
Charlie was for it, is to come up with some sort of resolution saying, here's, you get 10 more million, maybe Joshua Storehouse ought to get a little money, you know? Is
Yeah.
that what you're talking about?
Well, that, and also talk about the perpetual care fund and the opportunity
Yeah, I
fund.
think that's a great idea.
Is that something, Bob, you wanna talk about at a work session?
Well, I would just, a thumbs up to give some guidance to
Okay.
staff, is what I was thinking.
Is that something you guys?
What to do with the surplus? We should discuss
Well,
what.
yeah, I mean, in the broad context of what to do with the surplus, yes, if we want to express that if there is a surplus, our strong recommendation to a future council would be that you use this percent for perpetual care, that percent for this, and then this other percent for,
Reallocate.
tier 2 projects, or city projects.
Or
I think
helping
that'd
the
be a
poor
great
and
idea.
homeless, people who can't drive, that kind of thing.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, council, and I'll certainly defer to other staff, have been here longer than I have. But from what I've seen, that this last 4 years, obviously, the amount went down. The prior 4 years, there was a significant surplus, and council did direct at that time to put a substantial amount of money into, directed to the Opportunities Fund or the Perpetual Care Fund. I'm not aware of any kind of a guiding document or resolution to do that, but I do know that the councils in the past, had there been an excess, have made the determination where those funds go. So-
Well, what we're saying is that while we cannot bind a future council, we can certainly tell them this is what we think you should do with it.
Certainly.
And I think that's what
Just our recommendations
we're
do.
saying.
Yeah, here's our thoughts.
Yeah.
Because if we'd have had the 68 million now, we would have apportioned it
Yeah.
this way now.
Yeah.
But
What are
it
you gonna
can't
say?
change in 4 years too.
I'm reading Kanine's face, I'm trying to figure out what she's gonna say.
They're gonna do whatever they wanna do,
I
so
know,
why
just like
waste
we
their
would,
time?
so- Right, that's how I.
Let's just
Make
let them
them
make
feel
their own
bad if
choices.
they do whatever they want.
There you go.
We
That-
feel that strongly, just come down to the meeting and talk to them.
Maybe I can get Henley to go to the Supreme Court and reverse that case that says we can bind future, well, we can figure out how to tack it into CADA and that'll bind it for 20 years.
That's a real question, is what means you bind a future council? In my term on council, we have had a different council every year.
I'm out of here.
Nice
So that
to
means
see
you
you,
can't make a
Councilman
budget.
Walsh.
Anybody have
Did
anything?
you-
Otherwise,
Did
we'll
you
get you
figure
guys
out
out of
whether
here.
they charge, I asked your mom if they charge kids to park in that lot up there, and she was gonna find out and get back to
Are we
me.
done?
At the school?
Yeah, that's.
No, they don't charge.
Don't they? What's his name? He thought they might be charging.
Does anybody
something,
have anything they wanna go say,
Ex-
discuss first?
Your captain, your
No.
police captain,
Agenda looks good.
Priel.
Yeah.
He thought there may be a charge
Huh?
of it.
I'm hungry.
I'm
Mr.
hungry.
Mayor, I would just say that I think we've gone through a thoughtful process with this, and I feel pretty good.
I do too.
I'm obviously not happy with each and every one of these things, but I think we have a really good process.
And the only thing I will say too, because I want to love to get home tonight, be home with my family a little early on Tuesday. I would say I know there were a lot of people that were disappointed with what they've received. My thought is that we're doing the best that we can within the limited economic times that we're in. And we're always talking about being fiscally responsible, and I think we're working at being fiscally responsible, and we should be proud of that. So, thank you guys for your hard work. And Kanine, thank you again for steering the ship.
Thank you for being
Oh, was the
Canadian.
time not?
Were you?
Yeah.
She got a
She was,
split.
she was a
Was she
drill sergeant.
money?
I was hoping you'd hurry up and get back here.
I know my laissez faire.
God.
Let Dallas talk for 20 minutes. Thank you guys.